If I am to speak further about the benefits of accurate aiming, it should be emphasized that accurate aiming is also essential, keeping the mind free from sloth and torpor. It is another mental illness. Sloth and torpor are among the many hindrances that hinder, obstruct and block progress in meditation. They make the mind heavy, dull, cloudy, foggy and unclear, causing heavy eyelids and nodding. The heaviness, dullness of the mind, then heavy eyelids, nodding, sleeping, these conditions arise mainly due to the lack of accurate aiming, subsequently a lack of effort, sufficient effort. Because sloth and torpor contract the mind, whereas accurate aiming expands it. Sloth and torpor deactivate the mind. Accurate aiming activates it. Sloth and torpor make the mind stall, while aiming refreshes it. At night, when many thoughts are running through the mind, it becomes difficult to fall asleep because the mind is so active. In a similar way, accurate aiming activates and energizes the mind. Sloth and torpor wither the mind, whereas accurate aiming revives or brightens it like flower buds opening under the early morning. Under the sun of early morning, mind blooms, widens under accurate aiming. This is why whenever you feel dull, drowsy or sleepy, or whenever you complain, many yogis often complain about the sloth and torpor or sleepiness. So whenever you complain about sleepiness, you should make sure that your aiming is accurate and that your effort is sufficient. In this way, accurate aiming prevents the three kinds of wrongful thoughts which are associated with greed and anger. So, accurate aiming prevents greed and anger, and meanwhile, it prevents sloth and torpor. Not only accurate aiming, but effort as well. Effort also prevents the unwholesome states. I have already mentioned effort performs the four tasks. The forces prevents the unwholesome states which have not yet arisen, and second, it eliminates or it dispels the unwholesome states which have already arisen. Then it gives rise the wholesome states that haven't yet arisen, and fourth, it cultivates, sustains, develops and fulfills the wholesome states that have already risen. Of these four talks, let us begin with the first one. And to understand the first one, we first need to understand what are the unwholesome states that have not yet arisen. At a general level, one might mistakenly think, oh, there are no such unwholesome states that haven't yet arisen. Throughout the beginningless past, even in this very life, all kinds of defilements have already arisen: greed, anger, delusion, proud, doubt, sloth, restlessness, lack of moral fear and moral shame. These unwholesome states have already arisen in my mind. One may mistakenly think that there isn't a single defilement that hasn't appeared at same point in this endless cycle of samsara, or in this very life itself. This kind of thinking may seem logical, but in reality it is not correct. Let's take a practical example. Suppose you are practicing sitting meditation and suddenly a fellow meditator makes a noise, perhaps coughing, shifting or dropping something. In that moment, anger arises in your mind and you react. You react promptly. Oh, why this meditator making noise? Or what an annoying yogi. This specific anger toward that particular person or that particular yogi in that specific moment had not yet arisen before. It is newly born anger. Another example, suppose you go to the dining hall for breakfast or lunch and you see the food. Perhaps it looks especially delicious, or is the dish you are particularly fond of. In that moment, you fail to note seeing or tasting. As a result, greed arises, a subtle or the strong craving to have that food or to enjoy it or to take more of it. Now again, one might mistakenly think, oh, greed has already arisen many times before. What's new about it? But there too, it's important to understand the specific instance of greed toward that particular dish at that specific moment under those exact conditions has not arisen. This is a new occurrence, an unwholesome state that was not yet arisen until that moment. If mindfulness had been present, effort had been applied, if you had noted seeing, when your eyes land on the food, or wanting, when the craving begin to stir, it could have been prevented. The greed could have been prevented. This is precisely the function of the effort. That greed is newly born greed. It is also because every presently arising mind and the mental factor are new, because they arise, they appear and disappear each moment. They do not last even for a second. Every moment they arise and pass away, they arise and pass away. So whatever mind or mental factor arise at the present moment, they are the new ones. That's why every moment, if you apply wholesome effort to observe the presently arising object, it prevents the unwholesome states. The second task of effort is to eliminate, to dispel the unwholesome state that have already arisen. To understand this, we must first know what is meant by unwholesome states that have already arisen. It includes all the unwholesome mental states that have arisen in the past, from the beginningless past up to even moment ago, including everything that has arisen just a second before. So the effort strives to abandon or eliminate them through mindfulness, concentration and wisdom. Especially during practice, whenever unwholesome states such as anger, greed are noticed, it makes commitment to dispel them right away. That means when you notice the arising of anger, greed, you make effort, you make commitment to note and dispel those defilements. And that is the second task of the effort that you apply. One might mistakenly think that all kind of wholesome state have already arisen in my mind. I have performed generous act, dana, observed 5 precepts or the 8 precepts, sila, and practiced meditation, bhavana. So I have done all wholesome deeds, so all the wholesome mental states have arisen in my mind. In other way, you may mistakenly think, oh, I have already performed all 10 types of wholesome actions. There are 10 types of wholesome action. These 10 are dana, the first dana, generosity, second sila, morality, third bhavana, meditation or mental development. The fourth is apachayana. Apachayana means respect or reverence. Then fifth, the Vayavacha, service or rendering assistance. Then sixth, Pattidana, sharing of merits. Seventh, Pattanumodana, rejoicing others merit, Dhamma Savana, listening to Dhamma, 9. Dhamma Desana, expounding or teaching the Dhamma, and 10th, Ditti Jukamma, strengthening of one's own view or developing the right view. Even though you may have engaged in those 10 wholesome activities before, that doesn't mean all possible wholesome mental state have already arisen. Just like with unwholesome mental state, unwholesome state, wholesome qualities arise in specific moments, under specific condition. For example, when you observe the rising movement of the abdomen with effort, mindfulness, concentration, wisdom, and faith, the qualities supporting that movement of observation are fresh and new. That particular effort, that exact mindfulness, that exact concentration, wisdom, and faith connected with the rising movement have never arisen before. That means when you observe rising as rising with effort, if mindfulness is present, that mindfulness is wholesome state, wholesome mental state, and that has never arisen before. If concentration is present, then that concentration has never arisen before. If wisdom, faith, and confidence are present, they are never arisen before. Similarly, when you observe the following at that moment as well, if mindfulness, concentration, wisdom, faith are present, so they are newly born, the wholesome mental state. It is also because every moment new mind and the mental factors arise, hence the mental qualities, mindfulness, concentration, wisdom, faith, and confidence, including effort itself, are the new wholesome mental states that have never arisen before. Especially insight knowledges, path and fruition knowledges have never arisen before. So through the application of effort, meditators try their best to give rise insight knowledges and path and fruition knowledges. The fourth function is to sustain, cultivate, develop, and fulfill the wholesome states that have already arisen. That means through practicing meditation, when you develop the wholesome states, it is not just for developing once or twice. Persistently, continuously, you should develop them again and again. So the fourth, the effort also function as to not to lose or lost what you have already gained, what you have already attained. Instead, it sustains, it cultivates, develops until they become fulfilled. The interesting thing is, effort does these four tasks at the same time simultaneously, not separately. For example, when you observe rising and falling with effort, and your mind is well connected to the rising and falling, with rising and falling, then at that time, that effort prevents unwholesome mental states. It prevents at that time. For any reason, if unwholesome mental states arise, it dispels immediately by noting, by observing it. And at the same time, it gives rise the wholesome states like sati, mindfulness, faith and confidence, then concentration, then wisdom, because while you are observing precisely, if your mind penetrates into that object, then sati is there. Sati is present, and sati is a wholesome mental state. Where if concentration is there, then it gives rise to concentration, when mind becomes calm and collected. Then later wisdom develops. It gives rise to wisdom. And meanwhile, it cultivates, it sustains, and it develops what have already arisen. I think if I say in this way, then it will be more understandable. Let's say you observe force rising and falling with effort, with mindfulness, with concentration. Then you observe the second rising and falling constantly. And then you observe the third rising and falling. Now let's talk about the third rising and falling. The observation of the third rising and falling with effort. So that effort sustains, cultivates the mindfulness, the concentration that you have already developed when you observe the first and the second rising and falling. In this way, every succeeding, the effort, the sustain, cultivate, the preceding, the mental state, wholesome state that have already arisen. That means when effort is applied, while prevention is there, mind is prevented from arising unwholesome states. For any reason, if unwholesome states arise, it dispels, it eliminates, so mind remains pure and clean, or mind remains free from the mental illnesses. That is why we always urge the meditators, keep applying effort, keep trying harder. So when you keep trying your best, when effort is there, your mind remains free from mental illnesses. I'm emphasizing in effort, because without effort you can't develop mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. You can't improve in meditation. The effort is the chief, it is the forerunner for the mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. We can say it is the leader to develop the mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. That's why may all yogis be able to apply sufficient effort, continuously, consistently, by through application of sustained effort, may you be able to prevent the unwholesome states that haven't arisen yet. May you be able to eliminate, dispel the unwholesome states that have already arisen. May you be able to give rise the wholesome states that haven't arisen yet, and may you be able to cultivate, sustain, develop and fulfill the wholesome state that have already arisen.